Starting a photography project is more than just clicking the shutter button. It's about embracing a journey, exploring new perspectives and connecting with the world around us. It's an opportunity to express your unique voice and showcase your work in a tangible form. During this video, I'll be walking through my entire 30-day photography project, from the initial concept to finally getting my hands on the finished zine. I'll also share some ideas that may help you if you're deciding to embark on a similar project. Firstly, I just wanted to thank everyone that's been following along with the project so far in my weekly newsletter blog. I've genuinely been overwhelmed by the response and encouragement that you have given me, so thank you so much for that. So yeah, I've got lots to cover in this video. So what I've done is I've broken it down into chapters, which I'll list up here somewhere, and I'll also put a list of timestamps in the video description down below so you can come back to them for future reference if you like. Whilst there are many themes for a photography project, such as the 365 project or 50 days with a 50mm lens, for example, for me, I decided to remove any restrictions, embrace new ideas and be as receptive and open-minded as possible. By shooting this way, I hope to unlock new ideas and improve as a photographer. Lastly, I wanted to create a tangible outcome. I think there's nothing better as a photographer than to see your work in print. When I moved to this tiny corner of southwest Wales, one thing that struck me straight away was the sheer beauty of spring. The wildflower bloom in this area is unlike anything I've seen, and it sowed the seed for this project. 30 days shooting the wonders of spring in my local area. Later I shortened the title of the project to just 30 days. Quite often I think a project will present itself to you, so don't get too hung up on looking for a specific theme. During the project, I wanted to study colour theory, and I deep dived into this subject, taking inspiration from some of the great artists of the past, such as Henri Matisse and Claude Monet. This unlocked a new technique which involves colour minimalism. Selecting a scene that only has 2 or 3 colours that complement each other, making a complex scene feel more balanced and cohesive. Colour minimalism is a constant theme throughout my zine, and it's unlocked a new approach which I'll always consider when I'm composing my future images. The project itself started on April the 23rd, and what a way to start a photography project. With a stunning aurora over my local castle. I've never seen the aurora with my naked eye this far south, and I'm told this particular aurora was seen as far south as Hamburg, so probably one of the most spectacular displays on record. To witness this in the first hour of the project was simply a once-in-a-lifetime experience. It still gives me goosebumps now when I look at the images I captured that night. My only regret is that I didn't set up my time-lapse earlier, as I only managed to capture a few seconds of that before the clouds rolled in. The week that followed was great too, with some wonderfully foggy mornings which I took full advantage of, reshooting some familiar scenes and finding more along the way. A trip to Skomer Island also inspired me to include wildlife within the project. It was great to have some close encounters with seals, puffins, choughs, razorbills and guillemots. Shooting the aurora that first night got me inspired to take some Milky Way images to complement those pink skies I had already captured. Again, another learning curve for me, as I hadn't really shot that much astrophotography in the past. Again, this has definitely opened up my eyes to a whole new genre of landscape photography. It wasn't all plain sailing though. Throughout the project I had prolonged spells of clear blue skies and harsh light. But again, I tried to put my emotions to the side and focus on the positives, which in turn led me to capture intimate minimalist scenes. So with the project photographed, it was time to turn my attention to designing the zine. The first part being the look and the feel of the zine itself. So if you're not familiar with photography zines, a photography zine is a self-published book for photographers to share their vision. Photography zines offer flexibility in terms of their size and format and design. I think the beauty of photography zines is their lack of rules and restrictions. You've got the freedom to create it exactly how you want, whether that's a professionally printed fine art hardback or a DIY zine that you print at home on your printer and staple it together with a stapler. It's entirely up to you. In my case, I opted for a high quality, professionally printed square publication with weighty pages and a soft matte cover, giving my zine a project-like feel rather than a portfolio piece where a hardback book may be better suited. Now, as I'm ordering a number of copies to be printed, it was far more beneficial for me to design the zine myself and take that design to a printing company that specialises in zines for them to print. If you go down this route, I think it's really important to find a company that believe in your project and that are there to help with any questions that you might have. In my case, there was tons of questions, so it's really reassuring if you've got someone on the other end of the phone or on an email that you can just turn to if you hit any stumbling blocks. If you're thinking of making a zine for just yourself, say maybe 1 or 2 copies, then it's probably worth checking out companies that specialise in small print runs such as Blurb. Now, with Blurb, you can design your book online, pay your fee, and then they just ship it out straight to you with no hassle. Now, the unit price for this is higher, as you're only ordering like 1 or 2 copies, but it'd be far cheaper than ordering 1 or 2 copies from a company that specialises in larger print runs, you know. I think Blurb actually has a book design feature integrated within Lightroom, which makes it super simple to get started. If you're self-designing, this requires using programs such as Adobe InDesign to make your design, but more on that in a bit. So I ended up capturing 281 photos during the 30-day project. Of course, not always successful, so to narrow things down and to save time editing all of them, I culled my images in Lightroom to 79. Now, this wasn't a predetermined number, it's just what I ended up with after selecting my favourites. The next job was to run a quick edit on all of those 79 images, and this will give me a better understanding of colour, contrast and crop ratios when working this number down to the final 48. So yeah, I've chosen 48 photos for the zine, 1 for every single year that I've been on this wonderful planet. And I know what you're thinking, I look well older than 48, but this photography business has been blooming hard on me, I tell you. Anyway, let's move on. So culling the final number was pretty difficult, to be honest, as there were several considerations that were running through my mind. The first, how the book would flow, and the second, choosing matching pairs for each spread. So I think when we open up a photo book, it's really important that the adjacent pages fit well together. Now, there's multiple ways this can be done, either with colour or looking for a similar scene or theme, but this is highly subjective and entirely up to the person that's making the book. It's definitely a head scratcher though. So I ended up bringing in an extra 5 images from that original 79 that we'd already culled. So 53 edits to make. So then I decided to fully edit all of those images ready for the web, how I see the images on my screen here. So after I'd finished editing the 53 images, which took several days, I let them sit for a day or two before re-evaluating them and making a few final adjustments. When I was happy, I created a virtual copy for every image and labelled those as blue. These would be my print files. Whenever I prepare an image for print, I make several adjustments, generally boosting brightness, contrast, saturation and sharpness. Now I've no fixed preset for this, I just judge it based on each individual image. I found some images require more adjustments than others. Next, I made a physical print of every image, exactly the same size as my finished zine, which is 8 inches square. Fortunately, PhotoSpeed do a luster paper that's exactly the same size and is very close to the silk paper that I used in my zine. This is called PF Luster 275. It's a really nice photographic paper actually. Once I printed all of the 53 photos, I let the ink settle and evaluated every image and made notes if anything needed changing. I think I made slight tweaks to around 20 of the photos. Nothing too drastic, just minor adjustments to either contrast or saturation. I only reprinted 4 of the photos as I was happy at that point that everything would work out well. Next, I was back with a daunting task of sequencing these images and getting that number back down to 48. I found it much easier to do this with the prints though, as I could lay them next to each other and see exactly which images complemented the next. To make this a little easier, I separated my zine into 4 chapters. After much pondering, I finally made the cut and had everything in order to finally bring the project into InDesign. Before we get on to how I put the zine together in Adobe InDesign, I just wanted to say that I would love to get this zine out to as many of you as possible. So if you would like to support the project and also the channel, please follow the link in the description to take a look. To get this project off the ground, I've decided to run a pre-order for the next couple of weeks, as I simply couldn't afford to get this zine to print without doing that. All of the proceeds from this zine will go back into this channel to help us reach new locations and to allow me the time to create better, more engaging content for you all. So I do hope you'll consider taking a look. All pre-orders receive a 10% discount and a signed bookmark printed by myself. So I decided right from the beginning I wanted to give this book a minimalist feel. I really concentrate on photography as opposed to lots of writing. I think the square format really suits the minimalist feel, and I wanted to keep the typography simple too. The font is the same as the font I use in my videos and on my website. For the cover I used an image of some sand patterns which I took during the project. I underexposed the image in Lightroom and also desaturated. The cover, the rear cover and the spine are a charcoal grey colour, and also included a little bit of text on the spine there. I put this together in Adobe Photoshop, paying special attention to make sure I got the text right in the middle of the image, and obviously it was the right size for it to end up on the spine of the book. Once the covers were done, I put my design together in Adobe InDesign. Now, building a zine or book in InDesign is fairly simple, but there's one thing to bear in mind, and that's making sure you've got the correct size and bleed dimensions, and also to include the guideline markings on the final exported print-ready PDF. Your printing company will be able to give you all of this information. For me, the bleed dimensions were 3mm around all edges. And this means if I had an image that reached the very edge of the page, there would be no white edges when the paper is trimmed, because the image would exceed 3mm further than required. As I'd already sequenced the photos, it was just a case of dropping the images into the design and making sure the margins were correct. Once finished, I exported the final PDF as a CYMK print-ready document and sent it off to be printed. And here we are, the first copy of my zine, and what a journey it's been, and I'm thrilled to finally be holding this in my hands. The smell of the print and the feel of the matte covers, and just seeing my images in book format, it's just been such a rewarding process. And I can highly recommend a project like this to every photographer. I think I've learnt more in 30 days than I've learnt in the last 2 years. So yeah, be sure to grab yourself a copy of this zine by following the link over here. Your support is very much appreciated. Thanks for watching this video. Until next week guys, take care and I'll see you soon.